Welcome to the 2022 Mira Costa High School Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame ceremony. My name is Madison Calder, and I am pleased to be here today to honor these previous graduates of our wonderful high school Mira Costa.
My name is Margot Powell. It has been an honor to serve on the planning committee and be part of this tradition at Mira Costa. Today is a celebration of successful and inspiring Mira Costa High School graduates. Perhaps one day, a member of today's audience will be invited here to your alma mater to be honored on this stage as an inductee of the Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame.
At this time, please stand for the flag salute. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On behalf of the Hall of Fame Planning and Selection Committees, I'd like to express sincere gratitude to the following supporters who have contributed assistance to this program: MBX Foundation, Mira Costa Educational Foundation, Mira Costa High School, PTSA, MCHS Student Government, and Ralph's Photography.
We'd also like to give a shout out to both the present and past members of the committee that helped make today's assembly possible. Thank you.
Greetings to the Manhattan Beach Unified School District administrative staff, members of the school board, Manhattan Beach Educational Foundation, and the city government dignitaries who are in attendance today. We appreciate your support.
And now the Mira Costa Choir, under the direction of Miss Kate Krellin, will lead us in the alma mater.
All hail the alma mater, school that we hold dear. We're proud to be a part of you. We're prouder year by year. We sing your praises always, sing of your victories bold. We laud your honored name, Mira Costa, green and gold.
Thank you to Ms. Krellin and the choir. At this time, I'd like to introduce our principal, Dr. Karina Gerger.
Good morning, Mustangs. I am Dr. Karina Gerger, the proud principal of Mira Costa High School. Today, we have gathered together to honor 6 distinguished alumni who are being inducted into the Mira Costa High School Alumni Hall of Fame. Our inductees may seem very different from one another. They include a titan of surfing, a beloved football coach and former Costa teacher, an accomplished professor of radiology and MRI scientist, a nationally renowned best-selling author, a former college dean and vice president, and a former professional beach volleyball player. While their impressive accomplishments may differ, their roots are forever intertwined. Each of these individuals grew up in the South Bay and took full advantage of the excellent education provided to them here at Mira Costa High School. Today's honorees represent 4 decades at Mira Costa. 2 of them attended Costa in the 1950s, in the years just after our school first opened. At that time, most of the houses in Manhattan Beach were small beach cottages. 2 other inductees attended Mira Costa in the late 1960s and early 1970s during the height of the Vietnam War. One of our distinguished alumni graduated from Costa in 1982, and our final honoree today was a member of the class of 1992. While Manhattan Beach and Mira Costa campus have changed considerably since our distinguished alumni were students here, the standard of excellence at Costa remains stronger than ever. Though our 6 Hall of Fame inductees chose different paths in their lives after graduation. All of them will tell you that the outstanding education they received here at Mira Costa High School was the springboard for their future success in life. Costa made them better, and they in turn made Costa better. American author and educator Margaret Fuller once said, "If you have knowledge, let others light their candles in it." All 6 of our newest MCHS Alumni Hall of Fame members have shared their knowledge, experience, and passion with countless others. They have made Mira Costa's candle shine brighter. On behalf of the current faculty, staff, and students of Mira Costa High School, I want to thank all 6 of our 2022 Mira Costa High School Alumni Hall of Fame inductees for being here today and inspiring our current students to accomplish greatness. Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to the 9th Mira Costa High School Hall of Fame Assembly. This should be our 11th assembly, but like many things during the COVID era, we were on hiatus. It is a pleasure for me to be back here, serving as a member of the planning committee since the Hall of Fame was first introduced 11 years ago. And I've been called up from the minors today because normally at this assembly, Coach Chuck Currier is the MC. But because he's being honored today, I have the wonderful privilege to share some of my thoughts and hopefully some inspirations with you, as well as sharing all of the wonderful information about our esteemed guests. When I was your age, I ran to school. The 150-year-old wooden shack of a house that I grew up in was about the distance of the library door to the main office door at Mira Costa, and it was up on a hill above the school. It took 2 minutes to get there. But I ran to school almost daily when school was in session because I love school. I love school for the newspaper staff that met in the mornings. I love school for the yearbook staff that met during lunch instead of in a class period during the day. I was in the AV club, no surprise there. I ran to school for volleyball, basketball, and softball. I know I don't look like an athlete now, but I was then. I was always at school. I was at home at school. I loved that my volleyball coach, Coach Weaver, called me Digger before the term in volleyball. As a back row setter, the term Libaro didn't exist then. I loved that my history teachers always complimented me on the great questions I would ask, because I was a total history geek. Again, no surprise there. I loved that Mr. Shaner, the principal, called me kiddo. I loved that the lunch lady was always nice to me, despite the fact that I was a free lunch kid. My teachers, my coaches, the staff, and even the principals were caretakers of me. Lisa Harmon. They were fans of me, and they were believers of a poor little kid from the wrong side of the tracks. My community and my high school was really on the wrong side of the railroad tracks in my town. I tell this story today not because I want anyone to feel bad for me. I say this to the students in the auditorium today. I want to remind you that there are teachers in this school that give their all every day. The administrators lose sleep for you and with some of you. People in this building and in this community love their job and come to Costa every day for you. There are literally thousands of reasons to love your school, Mira Costa High School. You need to know that your plan in your life is your fate and in the hands of one person alone. You. I ran to high school every day and found my role models, my heroes, my teammates, and my best friends, still to this day. Everyone in the audience, I urge you, after this assembly today, if you haven't found your place at Costa, let us help you find it. Find your reason to run to Mira Costa each and every day. Today we'll be honoring 6 outstanding Mira Costa High School graduates: Bill Kelly, John Bernards, Brad Haga, Chuck Currier, Lavalley Pattison, and Daniel Ennis. Our first honoree is Mr. Bill Kelly, who entered Mira Costa and was a member of the class of 1953. He entered the newly built high school in his sophomore year. While he was here at Costa, he was a member of the CIF championship baseball team. He made all-league in football and received a scholarship to Pepperdine University while being the student body president and the senior class president. He started his secondary education instead, though, after entering the Army in 1957. He was able to come back from his service, and then he joined the El Camino football teams in 1958 and 59. Bill began his career after his own football seasons as an assistant coach at Aviation High School, which was part of Manhattan Beach and the South Bay Unified School District. He then served as a varsity coach that won CIF in 1963. He coached part-time at El Camino and left for a full-time job at Saddleback College in Mission Viejo. There and after, Bill Kelly acted as dean, vice president, vice chancellor of administrative services. Mr. Kelly's accomplishments have exceeded the norm in his 58 years of service in public education. He has served in countless boards and been a member of the president of directors that oversaw 72 community college athletic programs here in California. Since retiring in 1986, Bill enjoys golfing and traveling with his lovely wife, Judy. They have 4 grown children, 10 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. But to tell us about what Mr. Kelly was like in high school, we have some Mira Costa seniors, Skylar Macon and Jack Clark.
While Mr. Kelly was at Mira Costa, you can find him in his Levi's rolled up with cuffs and in black tennis shoes. He hung out at the quad and on the senior patio. Mr. Kelly was a member of the class of 1953 and therefore was here when Mira Costa was a collection of the finger buildings that make up the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s halls. Mr. Kelly was here when Mira Costa first opened.
Before he went to spend many of his years in his career at Saddleback College, Bill would watch shows like Dragnet, I Love Lucy, and The Ed Sullivan Show. Bill was a 3-sport athlete playing football, basketball, and baseball. He served as a member of student government in both the junior and senior class presidents. Please join us in welcoming Mr. Bill Kelly.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to congratulate my fellow inductees. It's very impressive to sit here and see all the things they've done. Second of all, I'd like to introduce my family, but there's so many of them, we'd be here till noon. So my family's in the front row. My wife, Judy, thank you. And then finally, a thanks to Mira Costa High School, to the board, to the administration, to the committee, and to all the people involved in this today. Thank you for honoring me. It's a great pleasure for me. I've been very fortunate. I have been inducted into 4 different Hall of Fame. This is my 5th one. But this one's special, and it's special because Mira Costa is special to me. This is kind of where I kind of turned the corner and decided that maybe I wanted to do something in the field of education. When I was a freshman, I was at Redondo High School, and gosh, I'd made some friends, and I made the JV baseball team. I think I even had a girlfriend. And I said, no way am I going to a new school in Manhattan Beach. No way. Well, my mother, who raised 7 children, and 4 of them, by the way, are Mustangs, said, yes, you are going. And so here I am. She made a lot of decisions for me that were good decisions. When I first arrived at Mira Costa High School, Peck Road was dirt. And I wouldn't know the place. When I came today, I said, I think we're at the wrong school. But sure enough, there's been some changes since I left. But I want to comment about, encourage all the things that happened to me in that first year here. Encouraged me, and they were done by faculty and a couple of coaches. And when I entered here as a 15-year-old, I had my mind made up I was going to be a police officer. I'd already taken some tests and was going to be a cop. And through the work of faculty here and a couple of the coaches, they convinced me that maybe I could do something differently. And so that 10 months after I arrived as a sophomore, I decided I wanted to be a school teacher. 35 years later, after 9 years at Aviation High School, excuse me, and 26 at Saddleback College, I retired after 35 years of education. And at my retirement dinner, one of those coaches who had helped me the most drove down to speak at that, and that was Ted Gossard. And he was a huge, huge impact on my career. And I will thank him. I will always owe him a great deal of gratitude for that. Any success that I had at Mira Costa High School, a lot of it came from the faculty. They took a liking to me, I guess, and they helped me and mentored me and turned me into a potential colleague of theirs at a later date. And the faculty, there were a number of them. I mentioned Ted Gossard and Walt Jacobsmeyer, and there was John Neff, and there was Larry Satterfield, and there were a number of others who all took me under their wing. And that's one of the reasons that I was able to have the success that I had in my teaching career. The challenge, I challenge each and every one of you to seek some help from your faculty, your teachers. I don't know the faculty today, but I'll guarantee you there are some Satterfields here that were when I was here or now here. The same type of people are here. The Satterfields, the Gossards, the Jacobsmeyers. Seek them out and ask for their help. They'll be more than happy to help you. And all I ask of you is to do a few things. Work hard. Take pride in yourself. Listen to your parents, your faculty, your family members. Listen to your teachers and your counselors, and then make some sound decisions. Along the way, have some fun. I don't know what I don't know the faculty here, but I'm sure there are a number of them here that would fill the role that those individuals filled for me. I will close with just one quick story. In my senior year, they put me in a typing class. And I was appalled that I had to go into a typing class. And the teacher was Mrs. Dorothy Butterfield. And she asked if she could visit with me. So I had a meeting with her in her office. And in 10 minutes, she convinced me that maybe I should take this typing class. She was a warm, genuinely sincere individual who took a liking, I guess, to me and mentored me through that typing class. Well, it was a blessing because it helped me get through college. It helped me in the military. And in the computer world we live in today, I wouldn't know what to do without it. I would like to, and my biggest regret about that story is I never thanked her personally for that advice. In my 35 years of education, I've counseled a number of students, and there was always a little bit of Dorothy Butterfield technique in the way I handled it. That's the type of impression she made on me. So Mrs. B, I know wherever you are, thank you very much. You're very, very special. And I would end by just saying to each and every one of you, work hard, do whatever you can, have some fun along the way, and thank you for honoring me today. It is a distinct pleasure, and I'll never forget it. Thank you very much, Mira Costa High School. Go Mustangs.
Our next honoree today is Mr. John Bernards from the class of 1956. John has had a great deal to do not only with the development of surfing, but also the surfing industry as we know it today. As John's friend and Orange County Register's contributing columnist, Corky Carroll will tell you, most everyone in the surfing business in the past 40 years will know John Bernard's name. Before launching the Offshore brand in 1973, Bernards worked in design for Kennington. He also worked for Hang Ten. During a trip, John met Jim Jenks of Ocean Pacific and Dave Rockland of Surfline. They suggested that John go into business for himself, and that is just what he did. The name of his company, Offshore, came from watching a huge swell hitting the coast along Big Santa Ana with the Big Santa Ana winds. Those winds are referred to as offshores by surfers. With the help of many others in the industry, John hired salespeople who were surfers who knew the market. Before long, his offshore products were at Becker's, E.T., and Jacobs and Hobie, just to name a few. In 1993, after 20 years of supporting surfing, volleyball, and canoe paddling, Bernard sold Offshore and went to work in other roles in the garment industry. He has served as the president of Newport Blue, the chief operating officer of Ocean Pacific, president of Greg Knoll Sportswear, executive director of International Skateboarding Association, and the director of development for the Surfing Heritage and Culture Center. A veteran of the United States Army, John has served as a professor at Otis College of Art and Design. He also had a great time at Costa. Here to tell you about his Costa years are Mila Matic and Jackson Zawacki.
On some days, John could be found hanging out at Costa in the courtyards near the cafeteria. His favorite teacher was Ray Southstone, who was also his basketball coach.
John played basketball for all levels at high school here at Mira Costa, and I bet he could still probably beat me in a 1v1. Around campus, he could be found wearing Levi's and JCPenney t-shirts, and he was actually one of the first members of the class at Mira Costa to spend all 4 years here and graduated from our school in 1956. So everybody, please welcome Mr. John Bernards.
God, welcome. Thank you for this recommendation. It means a great deal to me, and the introductions have been special. When I started at Mira Costa High School, we were the first freshman class, and I was scrawny, short, and the guys picked on me. There was this student, I was scrawny, and so they picked on me all the time. Luckily, I had a couple friends, Gary Odell and my sister, and they knocked them off of me. I don't know how many kids are scrawny and ugly when they're little, but I was. I figured out pretty quickly that I really liked basketball. And my favorite coach, Coach Ray Southstone, who I just ran into the other day, and he's 99. And he remembered me by name and went on and said, "John Bernards, I can't forget you," went on and on. So it was a great thing. But anyway, he impressed upon me that I'd been a good player, and I didn't know it at the time. I did not know it at the time. I had a very terrible case of dyslexia and ADHD. So I kind of couldn't read, which I couldn't read at that time as a freshman in high school. And it took me to 4 years of high school and 2 years in the Army to learn to read. And luckily, when I was in the Army, a couple guys said, "Bernards, you can't read." I said, "I just passed the test to become an officer." They said, "Does that tell you anything?" And so they took me over to William and Mary College and took me into a class, and I went to class for almost a year every night and learned to read. You can do it if you put your hands on and keep at it. Then I needed, you don't need any more proof about how much I've achieved knowing in high school. I had a favorite song, which is terrible. It was called Down in Bermuda. And my wife of today, it was her record and her song. And she had a million-hit record when I was a freshman in high school, sang with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby and on and on. She's very, very famous. So I got lucky. My favorite place on campus, and I looked out to see how it was now, it was the courtyard. When I learned to get along with all sorts of people and skills, it served me well because I could talk to people and everyone was having the same growing pains that you are probably, and better, some worse. But human kindness can mean a lot to people, and they'll remember it forever. I love to go off campus to Foster's Freeze in Hermosa and eat vanilla ice cream, then go to the beach. The beach was great then. There wasn't anybody on the beach. And we wore, the clothes we wore weren't quite as neat as the stuff you wear today. We wore Levi's and white t-shirts. That was it, Penny's t-shirts. And I also realized there was a different surfing style and clothing. A friend of mine, Dale Velzy, who was a surfboard maker at the time, and I talked and later went on to start my own surfwear company and then run the largest garment show in the world in Las Vegas called the Men's Apparel Guild. As I sold offshore, I took on other jobs that I could do. And the deal is that I'm not very good, but I'll give you 2 years. If it doesn't work in 2 years, then you can fire me without paying me. So there wasn't many guys that didn't go for that. My time at Maricosta was very special, and I want to thank the coaches and the people that I'm lucky to be able to see some of those folks when I go to reunions. So that's a little about me, and that I might appeal to you. I hope my experience can help you get through any problems you have. Needless to say, life is good. I've been married 55 years. Let me ask you something. Do you think anything about do you think the ADD, ADHD has done me any good? Anyway, Bill Kelly was a senior class president when I was a freshman, and we have been friends since then. Let's see. No, oh, yeah. Everybody else is young studs. Stud Lee for the lady coach. Anyway, thank you very much for nominating me for this. I appreciate it, and I wish you all luck.
Our next inductee is a member of the class of 1970, Brad Haga, pen name B.R. O'Hagan. Brad's love of history and literature was nurtured and encouraged by an extraordinary group of teachers here at Mira Costa. He went to UCLA as both an undergraduate and a graduate student and taught history for several years before working in film and television. He began his career as an on-set rewrite editor for New World Pictures and then worked in several areas in DC. He was a script doctor. But he moved to Oregon and purchased a 19th century farmhouse, and it was there, surrounded by thousands of acres of forest, 20 miles from the nearest town, that Brad began the next phase of his writing career. He established the reputation as one of the leading ghostwriters in the nation, producing articles and books for more than a dozen Fortune 100 CEOs, as well as national political figures, university presidents, entertainment figures, jurists, and retired military officers. Brad has ghost-authored 24 books, including several national bestsellers, with over 1.5 million copies sold. In addition, he has authored more than 100 articles in various publications, from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal to the Los Angeles Times. John lives in rural Oregon, where he writes in a converted barn in the pasture behind his home, just minutes from some of the finest Pinot Noir in the country. Today, Alex Ann Turgeon and Brady Stevens will do a quick introduction of B.R. O'Hagan. No, those are good.
During his time spent at Mira Costa, Brad Haga could be seen pulling up to school in his 1968 Volkswagen Beetle, tomato red with a monumentally underpowered 53 horsepower engine. He wore jeans and t-shirts to school daily and was both a wrestler and ran on the Maico High track team.
He was a member of Key Club, which is an organization still active on our campus today, and he was even his year's freshman, sophomore, and junior class president. His favorite teacher at Costa, a previous Hall of Fame honoree, Mr. Gary Hartzell, ignited his passion for history, particularly the frontier era.
Hartzell's powerful stories of mountain men blazing trails across the Rockies are the inspiration for his fiction novels.
Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Brad Haga.
Okay, this time it's real. You guys look good. You know, the last time I was on this stage, I was in a play, was in one play in high school, and it was directed by the actress who played Lois Lane in the television series. That's Mira Costa, and that's Manhattan Beach. I want to thank my wife, Leslie, for being here today, and I especially want to thank my former U.S. history teacher, who also became principal of Mira Costa, Gary Hartzell, who I see right back there. Hello, Gary. Thank you. No, as you look ahead at your own lives, I want you to do a little thought exercise. Fast forward 50 years. I won't be here, all of you will. And think about this. If you could pick any teacher that you have right now to have dinner with in 50 years, who would that be? It's a hard question for teachers as well. Who would they want to dine with? I had that pleasure last night, and I have to tell you that as an emotional experience it is coming back to this campus, being able to spend time with somebody I respect and care for so much and learn so much and was inspired so much by was really something. You know, it wasn't easy getting here, and I don't mean the traffic, which is crazy, by the way, but I mean that my life, like your lives, like all lives, are shaped in large part by circumstances that include accidents and surprises, some good and not so good. The week before my sophomore year here began, my mom was killed in a car accident. And my dad decided to take what was left of my family and move to Oregon. I was 15, but I knew I was looking at a life-changing event. And I said, Dad, I'm going to stay. And he said, I can't afford to maintain two households. So I rented a little apartment above a garage on 3rd Street, and I was working at a restaurant on 33rd and Highland, which is now Beach Pizza. It was called the Fractured Cow then. And so I increased my hours from part-time to full-time, and I cooked at night, and I attended Mira Costa during the day. As difficult a time as that was, for those of you who know the history of Mira Costa, it was a time where the creative life of this community was really beginning. North Manhattan Beach especially was a magnet for artists and musicians and writers and directors and incredible people, and they all poured through the Fractured Cow restaurant. John Lennon of the Beatles used to come in for pie when he was recording in town. He loved the homemade pie there. And one of the world's greatest living authors, Thomas Pynchon, was a regular customer who became a friend and encouraged me and supported me. So it was almost as if I was going to two high schools, the Fractured Cow and Mira Costa. The second accident I had was a little happier. I was a senior at UCLA working my way through college, and my favorite job was I was a janitor working on movie sets that were non-union movie sets, which mean they could hire anybody for any position. And the director and producer I worked for was a guy named Roger Corman, who's the king of B movies. He's produced more than 150 movies, And if you look up Roger Corman, you'll see that 145 of them are pretty bad. I wish none of mine were on that list. But and one of the most important jobs on a set like that was the writer, the on-set writer, because the actors in those kind of movies weren't terribly reliable. Sets would break down. The accountant ran in once and said, we can't film that next scene. We don't have money for the special effects. So the on-set writer had to make changes in real time. And one night, he didn't show up. He wrapped his car around a tree on Sunset Boulevard. And so the director said, I'm sorry, we're going to have to shut the set down. Everybody has to go home. Well, that's 24 people not being paid for the day, and that was a big deal. When out of nowhere, one of my friends yelled, "Brad can do it. He's a writer." And I'm standing over there with my broom, getting ready to sweep. And the director got very quiet in the room. And the director looked at me and said, is that true? And I looked at 24 faces looking at me and saying, "Kid, can you save our paycheck?" So what did I have to lose? I said, "You bet." And the director told me what changes he made it, and I dropped my broom, and I went to the keyboard and started writing. 3 years later, after working on dozens of films and television projects, I moved to Oregon. And I bought the proverbial house in the middle of nowhere in a deep forest, a mile up a gravel road, 20 miles from the nearest town, and set about writing the great American novel, which went really well till one day when I was driving home from picking up supplies in town, I looked across the valley and I saw smoke on this hill, and I thought, boy, somebody's in trouble. And then I realized there's only one person up there. My nearest neighbor was 2 miles away. That was my house. And I drove up to my house, which had burned completely to the ground. The great American novel was in ashes, but of course, I did have a backup on a disc upstairs. There was no online storage. There was no place else for it to go. So I needed a job. And a friend introduced me to a recently retired federal judge who, like most professionals, wanted to have a book written. And I did my first ghostwriting project for him, and he liked it, and I liked it. And he introduced me to the governor of his state, for whom I wrote a book. And the governor introduced me to the CEO of the largest aircraft manufacturing company on the planet. And he introduced me to the United States Secretary of Defense. And he introduced me to several other CEOs who introduced me to the United States Secretary of State, for whom I wrote a book. And then finally for the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. And each time along the way, it was a personal introduction to a personal introduction, none of which would have happened had my house not burned to the ground. And ghostwriting has been a wonderful, wonderful career, one that I never anticipated or expected. It was a surprise, and it came about by accident. The surprises don't stop, by the way, and unfortunately, neither do the accidents. They won't stop in your life. And the thing to always think about when they do occur, as bad or as wonderful as the event may be, it's how you respond to it, deal with it, and what you do with it that counts. Just before my wife and I left to come here, we were notified that a major video game company is looking at my most recent historical fiction book and considering it for a video game. I had no idea anything like that could happen. But I promise you this, you will have accidents in your life and you'll have surprises. I hope that you will take a look at the opportunity and the adventure they present and make it happen. Thank you, everybody.
Our fourth honoree today is Chuck Currier, a member of the Mira Costa High School class of 1972. Chuck has served as both a teacher and a coach for close to 4 decades. He has been the freshman football coach here at Costa since the 1970s. Molding young athletes' character and building their foundational skills, he has been a steadfast leader and a trusted colleague and friend. Perhaps Mr. Currier's greatest passion has been chronicling info in the Mira Costa High School History Project. The first decade, A History of Mira Costa, was published in August of this year. During his in-depth research of the Mira Costa property, Mr. Currier unearthed the history of the Uematsu family, Japanese immigrants who forged success importing and breeding Japanese camellias and cherry trees on the property where Mira Costa now stands. Mr. Currier's research brought forth the family. There was a wonderful ceremony last October in 2021. and he shared the real story, and that information is on a plaque outside of Miss Seeker's room today, which you could go by and see. Mr. Currier's contributions to the classroom, football field, and history project have been consistent and relentless over 40 years. I'm sure he will cite Mr. Bill Cooper as one of his most influential leaders, teachers, coaches, colleagues, and friends. Here to introduce the younger version of Chuck Currier are Rebecca Ritz and Braden Stoddard.
In the early 1970s, you could find Chuck Currier sitting on the planter wall next to the cafeteria. His off-campus spot was the beach. His favorite event was, of course, Mira Costa football games. Chuck was a Mustang football player and a member of the ski club here at Costa.
Chuck's favorite teacher was Mr. Bill Cooper, his social studies teacher and head football coach, who, by the way, is one of the original minds that helped started the Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame and a previous inductee. Please put your hands together for Mr. Chuck Currier.
I would certainly have to say I'm flattered, humbled, pretty amazed. I feel like I'm up here walking amongst the redwoods, and certainly proud to be on the stage with these 5 graduates. Thank you very much. As many of you have heard me say in other occasions, I absolutely love everything about Mira Costa, where I've spent the better part of my life since arriving as a freshman in 1968. I was 14 years old and Mira Costa was 18 years old. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything, but it sounded interesting to me at 5:30 this morning when I was putting this together. I thought about the fact that my doctor, Jason Hove, is a Mira Costa graduate. My previous doctor, Jimmy Dewar, was also a Mira Costa graduate. My dentist, Jim Withers, is a Mira Costa graduate, and now his son, Brian Withers, who took over the practice from his father, he's also a Mira Costa graduate. My first wife went to Mira Costa, and we were married at my football coach's house. My football coach was Bill Cooper, who taught at Mira Costa for over 40 years. Only 3 people in the 72-year history of this school have had facilities dedicated in their honor: Lloyd Waller, Carl Fisher, and Bill Cooper. At Mira Costa, I met many excellent teachers and coaches, but one has played an outsized role in most of the major events and turning points in my life, and that would be Mr. Bill Cooper. Here's a few examples. 1 month after graduating from Mira Costa, my father died. My mother had died 7 years earlier. I had basically run out of parents. When I told Cooper, he didn't say, "Wow, I'm sorry to hear that, and let me know if I can help you in any way." He immediately said, "If you need a place to stay, you come and stay at my house." Later that same summer, he calls me to ask if I would be interested in helping coach a Pop Warner team in Manhattan Beach. I said, "Yes, that sounds like it would be fun." I had no idea that would lead to coaching 42 different teams over the next 50 years. Just sounded like fun to me at the time. The next year, he asked me if I'd like to help coach on the freshman team at Mira Costa. That was 1973. And I said, "Sure." I already found that I really liked coaching after just 1 year of doing it with the Pop Warner kids. I liked it so much that I even kept coaching the Pop Warner team. I would leave the field at Mira Costa at about 5:30 and drive down to Live Oak and coach for another 2 hours. I just couldn't get enough of it. A couple of years later, he just happens to mention that, "Hey, if you like coaching football, you probably need to become a teacher." And I said, "How do I do that?" Next thing I know, I'm going to college. While I'm going to college and still coaching football at Mira Costa, I'm at that time coaching with my future brother-in-law, Mickey Craven, also a Mira Costa graduate, who had married one of my classmates, I mean, it was a total Mustang marriage deal. And then I meet his wife's younger sister, also from Mira Costa, and we eventually decide to marry. It didn't happen quite 2 days in a row, but you get the idea. I'm trying to condense this. So Bill Cooper suggests we get married at his house. How convenient. And another Costa grad, his father just happened to be a judge in the area, and he came and did the ceremony for us. So this was, how cool could that be? As you're starting to see, Bill Cooper seemed to always have a plan when I needed one, but I'm not sure I always did. I'd like to say that everything always works so nicely, but of course, life's an adventure, and on adventures, you don't know what may happen next, but you learn a lot. Teaching didn't begin on schedule for me, but owning a business happened. Marriages didn't last. That was marriages with an S. But I have an incredible daughter who's a veterinarian and here this morning, and I have a wonderful wife who taught high school for 50 years. As I say, they're both sitting down there today. I appreciate them unbelievably. Eventually, about 30 years ago, I began teaching here, and this has been one of the very best 30 years I could ever imagine. I fully believe that Bill Cooper was somehow instrumental in my being hired here at Mira Costa 30 years ago. And once again, Cooper seemed to have a plan when I most needed one, but I'm not sure I did. Fortunately, for all of you, there are many, many Bill Coopers here at Mira Costa. They're in every one of the classrooms, and they're elsewhere around the campus. They're here for you just as Bill Cooper was there for me. I just want to thank you, Mira Costa, and what a great morning.
Our fifth honoree today is Lavalley Pattison from the class of 1982. Lavalley, a professor and coach at El Camino College, played volleyball at Costa and was one of the many, many CIF champions who have been to our school. She began her collegiate career as a setter at the University of Santa Barbara in 1982. She then transferred to El Camino, where she captured both regionals and state tournament MVP awards. Her illustrious career spanned decades as she worked her way through the volleyball ranks, earned her master's degree, and started teaching physical education. Pattison began working for the Women's Professional Volleyball Association as a tour director. She worked for the Olympic Challenge Series and with the Association of Volleyball Professionals that toured the country. The opportunity to coach Division I volleyball opened in 1987 at Pepperdine, where the Waves were the WAC champions and then went on to be winners for 4 years in a row. Pattison was inducted to the El Camino College Athletic Hall of Fame. The AVCA named Lavalley the 2004, 6, 8 Regional Coach of the Year. She was also the Southern Section Coach of the Year in 2008. To hear about Miss Lavalley Pattison and to tell us more about her younger years are Lily Sexton and Jason Walmer.
On a typical school day, you can find Lavalley Pattison sporting her surf wear like most students at the time. Her favorite movie was Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Her favorite hangout at school was the quad, and after school, the beach. As a three-sport athlete in volleyball, soccer, and track, her favorite class was whatever sport she was playing at the time. Having no car, Miss Pattison made her way around the community on her bike, which she had to pedal.
Lavalley Pattison, like many of us, went each year to the hometown fair. This photo shows her and their mom and the pal trying to make community members aware of not just any hometown fair, but the very first hometown fair in our town in 1973. Let's have a round of applause for Lavalley Pattison.
My name is Lavalley, but it's tough. Big thank you to everybody for having us for the Hall of Fame today. I'm incredibly honored, and I know that the planning is overwhelming for an event like this. I'm going to make up a little time. I didn't have a long speech. I feel really grateful to be here with these gentlemen up on the stage. I spent most of my time on the north side of campus, on the track, on the soccer field, and in Fisher Gym. So I didn't have a lot of time in the library, which I had to find this morning. We were proud to wear green and gold. I made lifelong friends on my team each time we were on the field or the gym. I get to see the future beach volleyball players working out in front of my mom's house on the beach. You guys have fantastic opportunities out there. Take the time and enjoy the journey. You all get to pick your goals. You get to pick the fantastic schools you want to go to, but the journey is half the fun. So take time, make your friends. I'm all about green and the gold, and forever a Mustang. Thank you.
Our final honoree today is Daniel Ennis from the class of 1992. Dr. Daniel Ennis is a professor in the Department of Radiology at Stanford University. As an MRI scientist for nearly 20 years, he worked to develop advanced translational cardiovascular MRI methods. Mr. Ennis's career has spanned across decades, and he has been a leader in his field. In 2018, Ennis returned to the radiology department at Stanford University as faculty. He is the director of radiology research for the Veterans Administration Palo Alto Healthcare System. Additionally, Dr. Ennis has been the chairman of an international society for MRI research. Here to tell us about his younger days, before he was at Stanford, are Reese Riley and Finn Engels.
On a typical day of school, you could find Daniel and his lunch crew eating on the lawn underneath the flagpole in the Rose Garden, now part of the Mustang Mall. After school, his spot was the beach between 30th and 32nd Streets, and his favorite restaurants were El Tarasco and The Kettle.
Daniel ran track all 4 years and had some of his best memories from his coaches, Egan and Fish, barking at he and his teammates to run faster, jump higher, or not to drop the baton. Ennis's favorite teachers were the late Dr. Marilyn Worry and Mr. Michael Cook, who is still involved with the MCHS volleyball program today. Daniel Ennis really enjoyed Friday night football games at Costa, like the home game tonight, neon theme, be there, and noted that Scholar Quiz was always a blast. Please welcome Daniel Ennis.
Good morning, Mustangs. Very pleased to be here this afternoon, this morning rather, and really pleased to meet these wonderful inductees. Thank you for honoring me with this award. It means a lot to be recognized for one's accomplishments, and it's a time to reflect on sort of how we got where we are. First and foremost, of course, I want to thank my parents who happen to be sitting here front row. They've been ardent, stalwart supporters of me during my entire life. And certainly during my education here in Manhattan Beach, where my own kids were also attendees at Grandview and MBMS before we moved a few years ago so I could work up at Stanford. But again, thank you so much, Mom and Dad. As someone who's had a measure of success in science, I'm certainly grateful for the outstanding science education that I got here at Mira Costa, especially grateful for the efforts of Mr. Brissy and Spinagle and Miss Betty Estel. Really provided a fantastic science foundation for me before I went to UC San Diego to really begin the next phase of my academic career. But I also want to point out that I really benefited tremendously from my English education here at Costa. And the teachers that I had here mentioned before, Mr. Cook and Dr. Weary, were really foundational in forming for me an appreciation of language and English and writing. And as someone who works as a scientist and whose daily activity really involves, inventing and discovering new things, absent their emphasis on written language and expression, I wouldn't be a good scientist. It's incredibly important to be able to communicate what we do in our daily lives to others to enable us to do the next things. And I encourage you to find the connections between both the arts and the sciences in your own way. Lastly, a bit of advice for you. We all have a tendency to seek similarity, which can be really comforting, but I encourage you to see differences in others as valuable, as fascinating, and as rich, and learn from as many people as you can, understand their perspective, and enrich yourself with their experiences. Look also to help by leveraging your relative privilege to maximize the good you can create for others. Thanks for this very thoughtful award. Be nice, do good things. Thank you.